Chris, welcome to the Tech Recruitment podcast. You have exited your recruiting business. So this is something we could start with because a lot of people within our community, they are just kind of looking up at people like you who have exited the staffing agencies or recruiting agencies. So before we dive deeper, why don't you tell us what was it like? What does it feel like actually to exit a business?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on the show. It was an interesting experience, put it that way. When I first set up the business with my co-founder, we didn't really have horizons. We wanted to build out a multi-million pound business, and in 9 years, we built it out to 25 million pounds turnover. We had nearly 100 people with 3 offices. We won 14 industry awards. It was one of the best, if not the best, recruitment business out there. Predominantly senior IT recruitment business. 70% contract, 30% perm. So we had lots of recurring revenue. Award after award, profit after profit, growth after growth. We just opened up our third office. And then my business partner walked in one day and said that he didn't want to continue anymore. So for me personally, that was a challenge and something I didn't expect. So what we had to do then was find a partner or a private equity vehicle to buy him out. So it actually came as a surprise that it came earlier than what I expected. So we did a private equity deal, and his 50% was purchased. He exited the business. I stayed on as the CEO for 2 more years, and the culture changed. What I'm not going to do is dress it up and say it was easy and it was glamorous. If you're serious about growing your business and then exiting with an external investor, you have to choose wisely, and B, you have to be prepared for the situation to change. You're no longer as in control as what you were. You can't make the decisions that you made before, because you have to get them ratified by the people, and the people that invest in your business, they want their pound of flesh, if you like. So I wouldn't say we wasn't looking at the bottom line, but pre the investments and the takeover, it was very much, let's just get as many sales in as possible and grow the business. We threw caution to the wind a lot. We invested heavily in our people and our incentives and the culture. When my business partner left and the private equity firm came in, that changed. So it became a difficult situation for me, actually. But I eventually exited after 2 years. And the sum that I was expecting, I didn't actually get. So I think people need to be cautious around having a figure in mind. You get an offer, you may well get an offer for the figure that you think that you want. But then once the due diligence is done and everything else is done, more often than not, you get chipped away at numbers as well. So be prepared to be flexible, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how you mentioned the timeline. You mentioned after 9 years the business was acquired, and you mentioned that it was even earlier than or your partner left earlier than expected. It just reminds me how important it is to have some decent time expectations in mind, right? Because you were kind
No,
of
absolutely.
early, right? And a lot of people are getting into business thinking they will exit in 3 years or 4 years, and then they get disappointed if they don't after 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very rare that a business, a startup business in recruitment would exit within 3, 5 years. The market changes, there's cycles. So when I go into businesses now, and I'm an advisor now, and I've helped over 50 recruitment business build, scale, and grow and sell. It's always a minimum of a 3 to 5 year plan from when I joined. So I think that be prepared for a lot of due diligence as well. I mean, they pretty much counted the coffee granules. Every single transaction, every single email, every single possible thing is investigated, and it can be a long, drawn out process, and which can affect things. So it's important that you choose the right partner. And if you are thinking about selling your business, it's important you have things like board meetings and board packs in place. And there are many factors that determine whether a business is fit for sale. It can be the market, It can be the strength of your management team. It can be whether you've got contract or perm. It can be whether you've got a good diverse portfolio of clients, i.e. if you're heavily reliant on 1, 2 or 3, 4 clients, it's probably not as valuable. Succession planning as well. What's the business going to be like if you're not there? And a number of factors really. So I would advise that you would seek to get other people in to help you with that, because it's not an easy process to navigate at times.
I see. And also, as you mentioned, you mentioned, for example, the split between contracting and permanent placement. So some people out there, they may not even know what to start with. Should they go with permanent placements or contracting business at first, or should they do both at the same time? You mentioned you have some 70-30% split. So what should someone do who is just kind of at the beginning looking forward to starting their own recruiting business?
Ordinarily, the majority of recruitment businesses are worth more who have a contract revenue stream. So I would advise that you do both. And ideally, if you can, get a dozen contractors out, 20, 30, 40, you're getting, tens of thousands of pounds of revenue every month whilst you sleep. What it enables you to do is make more decisions more quickly, because there's less risk. You know that in the next 6 months, pretty much, you're going to get some revenue, as opposed to just doing perm, which is great as well. But you do the deal, you might not get the money for 60 days, 90 days. And even when you do get the money, you've got to start again. So I think it makes sense to penetrate clients with both perm and contract. I would try and start with a contract mentality, because what I found is, being a contract recruiter at heart, is that when you get a contract roll on, ordinarily your mindset is to close that business down, that role down, that client down within 2 slots straight away. So I think it engenders a much more of a sales culture as well, much more job control. I think where consultancies go wrong is that they get delusions of grandeur. They get loads of perm roles on and think they're in a good position, but actually the quality of those roles aren't as good as what they think, as in they may have qualified the specification of the role, not the process. So you might be against 4 or 5 other agencies, or not dealing with a decision maker. And I think it's really important that the process is qualified as much as the specification as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, with the
I was just going to go back to touching on the emotion of that deal. I just remembered you asked me about the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking into the boardroom of the private equity house, one of the biggest boardroom tables I've ever seen. Probably could seat about 40 or 50 people. There were piles and piles of paper, 60 or 70 different piles of paper, 100 pages high. I had to sign, and it was just, I didn't feel a sense of, I was quite numb initially. It was a really weird situation, because I think I was so, it was such a long process that when I actually got there, it wasn't what I thought it'd be. So I think my advice is to try and enjoy the destination, the journey, as much as the destination, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a great takeaway indeed, because a lot of people are just looking at the end event, and it may not be as enjoyable as you say. So definitely. So, but how can people get there? If they can still enjoy the journey, as you say, and get a great salary on the way. A lot of people are looking at the permanent placements because the commissions are usually higher, right? And pay up, not upfront, but they can accumulate the commission faster. So based on your experience, is it easier to get a client for contracting or for permanent placement?
Yeah, I mean, it's harder to identify a client that's looking for contractors, but when you do get them, most of the time you will place them. But I think that it's about making sure that you're not just phoning a butcher, baker, and a candlestick maker. What I mean by that is that you do have a strategy, you have a market map, you have a plan. So how I built my businesses is that if you're doing, say, tech recruitment, instead of just sending, say, a Java developer or a .NET or a C# or a DevOps person to anybody, understanding where that candidate may have worked. He may have worked in a manufacturing or retail industry. So then identify manufacturing and retail clients that take on Java.net and send a Java.net candidate who's worked in retail to a Java.net manager who's worked in retail, as opposed to just sending them to everybody. So the horizontal and vertical markets works really well. So niche down. And I think recruitment consultants and consultancies say we're specialists in finance or we're specialists in, and when you actually say it, when I interview a particular consultant, the consultant's doing all finance roles across Europe and Australia and USA, it's like, that's not specialist. So I think it's really important to become a master of your trade, because when you really know the market, you get the confidence, and when you get the confidence, you get the knowledge, and when you get the knowledge, you get the confidence. So when you're speaking to your clients and your candidates about specific projects, about specific technologies, specific companies, the client's going to want to buy from you. So I think in many cases, less is more.
Well, this is such a great advice, because a lot of people transition, for example, from healthcare to IT, and they think they already specialize in IT because they do some IT, but the whole IT is just so broad. There are so many different roles. You mentioned Java or DevOps or cybersecurity. So, and then you can niche down to fintech, you mentioned. So would you suggest someone who is, let's say, in California, to start focusing on cybersecurity specialists in California for fintech companies? Like, is this what you have in mind?
That's as a starting point, that could work quite well. And stick to that plan for 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks. Speak to those candidates. Draw up a list of 30 ideal clients in that space, fintech, cybersecurity clients in California, your top 30 clients, and then look at all the candidates that might work there already, all the job titles, look at all the managers that work there, and just speak to them, get the knowledge, and then eventually you'll name drop other competitors, you'll name drop, and people, you start to match apples with apples, and you'll name somebody. So I spoke to John Taylor last week at Cybernet in California. Oh, did you? I had dinner with him yesterday. Oh, okay, there we go. And it's like, as opposed to doing one market one week and then doing another market in a different location another, it just doesn't make sense to me to do that.
Yeah. That's a great advice. Awesome. And you mentioned also the industries. So based on your experience now advising to all these other recruiting businesses, would you say there is one industry that is more exciting than the other based on?
Well, the tech industry itself was a very exciting industry. That's took a huge hit last year and the start of this year. I think that will come back towards the middle of this year. I think the energy sector is a really good sector. Commodities, energy, oil and gas. That's a good sector. The property and construction sector is decent as well. The crypto AI market seems to be having a good run at the moment as well. But predominantly, look, I don't necessarily believe in recessions. So I've worked or depressions or downturns. So I've worked through about 9 of them. I think that if you're speaking to the right people and you're putting the right candidates in front of the right clients, you'll always find a buyer. So that's why it goes back to that niche area. But I think that it's one of those things where, say, the tech market isn't doing very well at the moment. What I would suggest is, well, why don't you do tech candidates into energy, into different sectors, so you can work smart and kind of do it that way. So yeah, I'd say energy, construction are good markets. And IT as well. There's always an IT project happening.
It's just now reminding me that there are all these startups that took the hit, as you say. The industry in the tech sector is not doing really well with all the high-tech companies selling of people, but still there are lots of other companies looking for the IT professionals. You mentioned the energy sector, right? But can you give us a few more examples of what do you envision by this? Like, would you say someone who is just, let's say, beginning the tech recruitment journey, the person would start approaching, I don't know, delivery managers in the in the industry, the energy industry, or What do you have in mind?
Yeah, well, the energy industry is massive. They have traders, they have analysts, they have fund managers in there, because a lot of money is invested in oil and prices in the stock exchange. There's lots of that financial kind of trading stuff going on, which could be a good place to start. But there's also a lot of technology in energy as well, around making sure that their systems and processes are of the latest cutting edge. So why can't you do IT tech into energy as well? So speak to the IT department, speak to the financial department. That's the thing. I think that this is why I think the industry sector is just as important as the verticals.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, that's a great tip. And recruiters also face lots of rejections, especially when they approach hiring managers or prospective clients. So based on your experience, is there any way how to overcome the negative feeling that comes with all those rejections?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that if you're not willing to accept rejection in recruitment, then you probably shouldn't be in it. It's just, unfortunately, it goes with the territory. And it's one of those things that you have to accept and learn to grow from. So it's a mindset thing. The chances of you phoning up a hiring manager and he says, "Oh, hi, Michael, I'm so glad you phoned me. Funnily enough, just now I've just signed off 5 roles. Yes, I'll use your agency." It's not going to happen. So it's a difficult situation. But what I would suggest is that you go into it with asking the question, "Who am I?" And if you're putting the client on a pedestal, or think the person on the other end of the phone is superior to you, you've already lost. It's only a phone call. They're a human being. So be yourself, be personable, go in there with market knowledge, but have a mindset of, if this person doesn't give me the business, is the next call and the next call. So, and often rejection should make you stronger. So for me, it's not how you handle it. It's just part of it. It's not going to go away. You learn to just you learn to accept it. Hopefully, it's not for everybody though. It's not easy. It's demoralizing. But if you're doing something that you've got knowledge on and you enjoy it and you're confident, if you position yourself as, actually, I'm the expert here, I'm the person that could solve this client problem, and the client will need you more than you need him, as opposed to the other mentality, you'll probably end up getting a better result.
This is actually so true. It just reminds me, I'm in the office sitting next to a lawyer, and I sometimes think, what does he do to get clients, right? He's probably not begging those clients like, "Hey, I'm a lawyer, can I work for you?" Right? Like, he's positioning himself as a professional advisor. And recruiters, on the other hand, they often do exactly what you mentioned. They lack confidence, they're often begging prospective clients to pick up the phone and respond to the email.
Absolutely. And I teach a lot of my clients, because I do strategy and operations and marketing, but also I do this nitty-gritty stuff, which I love. So last week I was chairing a board meeting. For the week before that, with 3 different clients, I was giving them pitch training on how to actually make a cold call, how to do the introduction, the pitch, the tone. What if you get an objection from a client, how to handle that, how to build rapport. And I think most of the time it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, and your thought process and your mindset around it. So it's really important that anyone who runs a recruitment business trains their consultants on that. You can have all the operations and process in the world, but if your consultant is feeling nervous or anxious about it, that's going to reflect in the call. So I think mindset's really important. So yeah, that's some of the stuff that I do, certainly.
Mm-hmm. And now when you say the consultant is calling, do you have the recruitment consultant to make the calls to prospective clients, or are you referring to, account managers or business development managers to do those calls?
Yeah, I think generally recruitment consultants, but some recruitment businesses have different people. Depends what the account is. If it's an existing account, then it'll be an account manager. But I always believe that try and get out in front of your customers. Cold calling is good. Zoom calls. There's different ways to business development. You know, so sending a good quality candidate to a manager, then following that up. I think there's different techniques. It doesn't have to be, a cold call saying, "Are you looking for anybody? Are you looking for anybody?" Do your research, map it out, plan it out. But yeah, recruitment consultants need to be proactive. I think what happened last year, because the market was good up until about 18 months ago, or about a year ago, the market was good. Clients were phoning up, clients were giving jobs out to recruitment consultants. And a lot of recruitment consultants got used to that, and they almost took it for granted. They got a bit self-entitled. Then the market changed. No one's going to give you anything now in this market. You have to go and get it yourself. So you should always have a mentality of business development. Always be teaching your consultants how to have the mentality that every call that you make is an opportunity. Every call you make to a candidate, ask them the next question. So business development should be a normal mainstay in your activity on a daily basis.
Oh, that's very interesting. I've seen lots of agencies have the split between recruitment consultants and account managers. But what would you say totally makes sense, because they should also do some activity to get new clients on board. So then what would help most with those recruitment consultants to actually make those calls? Because it's really difficult, right? Just to pick up the phone and call to some company, to some manager. So is there any kind of asset or metric?
I have specific day plans and week plans and 90-day plans that I run through. It touches on what I've already mentioned about sitting down with the consultant, understanding what their market is, understanding what their knowledge is around that, the horizontal and vertical aspect of that, and getting them to understand. So what constitutes a good day? What's a good day for you? What's a good week for you? If I don't know, then that's a problem. But for me, it's having 5 decent business conversations per day. So you could, and that's how you're measuring a good day. So if you're not having these conversations, why aren't you having these conversations? Oh, I can't get through to the people. Why can't you get through to the people? And it could be a question of they're speaking to the wrong people. They're approaching them in the wrong way. They're not. So it's making sure that they have a plan. So I would sit down with them, spend 2, 3, 4 hours mapping out the market. And one of the best ways to do it is to start with candidates. Speak to as many candidates in your niche as possible. Find out the type of clients they're working for, the type of roles they're going for, the type of technologies they're using, the knowledge. Spend 2, 3, 4 weeks just getting as much knowledge as possible. Then from that activity, you probably know about 40 or 50 clients, because you'll be, you worked at that company there 2 years ago. Tell me about that. And you have that, and then you can approach the clients and say, well, I know you use these technologies. I know you've taken on these people before. These are exactly the type of people that we place. When are you next looking? Kind of thing. So I think it's also about building proper relationships as well. So don't see it as a transaction when you're speaking to a client. Yes, you want to make that placement, but try and understand the whole client issue, the whole client business. What's the values of the business? Why would someone want to work there? And be a true partner with the client as well. I think that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. This also brings us to what the value of a recruiter is going forward, because you mentioned the phrase to be a partner or to be an advisor to the client, and I think a lot of recruiters these days, they are just shifting or forwarding CVs. And a lot of the activity will be replaced by AI anyway. It already is in the sourcing area. So what would you say is the future of recruitment consultants going forward? What are they going to do?
I think that having a good tech stack is important, having a good database, having some sourcing tools and some automation. I think that's really important. But ultimately, AI will never fully replace the human being. People buy from people. I think it's really important that you build relationships. So the future is very much a balance between I think where some recruitment companies have gone wrong is they've relied too heavily on their automation and their tech, and they're speaking to candidates and clients only via email, and even internally in the recruitment business, or speaking to their team and their staff only via email or via WhatsApp, so they're not having that relationship. How you communicate with your team internally is how your team will communicate with your clients externally. So yes, it's important to do mail shots and attract candidates en masse via email and automation. Yeah. But you've got to start picking up the phone. You've got to start having Zoom meetings. You've got to start having team meetings. You've got to start face-to-face meetings. Otherwise, I feel as if you'll only go so far. So I think that we need to be careful that we don't just hide behind our screens, because those relationships don't tend to necessarily last as long as what we think they would.
And that's especially hard now with the remote work, people working from home. So with those businesses that you are working these days, would you say they are being focused on office work? Do their consultants work on site, or are they rather remotely?
I think with COVID, it really did affect things. I mean, pre-COVID, I was very much work from anywhere, work from home. It was like a swear word. I want everyone in the office 5 days a week. But I think COVID did change things, and there is a lot of plus points with remote work. You can do meetings, you can do more meetings more quickly. You don't have to commute. I think, but the balance of generally now, most of the clients in the UK and other clients, they've either gone back to 5 days, or it's a hybrid of 3 and 2. So usually a minimum of 2 or 3 days in the office minimum, because I think that it just encourages that culture, the camaraderie, and that proper, that proper bonding. So I think having a fully remote business in recruitment is harder to scale, much harder to scale than one that isn't.
Okay, so you would advise to have offices with recruitment consultants who are sitting together and working?
So absolutely, or certainly if you are remote, certainly at least try and meet up with your teams somewhere in person once a month, once a quarter at least. If you're fully remote, I think, you can. These days, there's a lot of shared working spaces, like WeWorks and things like that. You don't necessarily have to spend lots of money. But I would certainly encourage some meetups. Yes,
Awesome.
Work. Yeah.
Awesome. And just coming back to what we discussed a while ago, we discussed the contingent and outstaffing model, the consulting. But there is one more model which a lot of people are interested in. It's the retained model. Yeah. So, it gives some sense of security to recruiters. They get some money every week or every month from the client. But based on your experience, is it so much more difficult, or would you say, hey, let's not waste time now? It's very difficult to get retained contracts.
No, I think that as I touched on earlier, if you demonstrate to the client you're a true specialist in the market, and you know that you've got a track record, you know the market, and you pitch it in the right way, the right client will understand the benefits of having a retained solution, because really the client doesn't want to deal with more than one agency, and they want to have the comfort around you delivering. So for me, in many aspects, it's easier being retained, because if you're not against other agencies. You got the money up front, and if anything, the pressure's more on you once you've got that first payment in. You're on it and you deliver it. So people think it might be a little bit different to pitch it, but once you've got that roll on, it's happy days, right? Sure, I don't understand how recruitment agencies don't do more of the retained or the exclusive aspect of it. I think they fear it's too difficult, the client's going to say no. If you don't ask, you don't get. But again, it goes back to how you're pitching and positioning yourself. And some contingent, don't get me wrong, some contingent is great, but ordinarily, if a client doesn't want to do retained or exclusive, you have to question whether that's a good client or not.
That's powerful. That's actually really powerful, because there are lots of clients that don't even have the budgets approved, and they already share the job descriptions with agencies.
Yeah.
They can waste lots of time. Okay, and you also mentioned something interesting with regards to proving to the client that you are the right recruitment consultant to work with. So it could be a good idea to do some work on the contingent basis and then switch to retained. But when is the right time? What are your thoughts about how to actually decide when to ask the client for a retained contract?
I would ask them from the very first time, because then you're understanding whether, because if you start with contingent, it's very difficult to go back to retained. But if you start retained and they say no, so one of the things I would suggest is that you spent, I don't know, an hour on the phone to the client, or a Zoom meeting, or even face to face, and you say to the client, right, thanks very much for this. We've spent a good hour together. We've got a really good understanding of the role. We're very confident we can deliver for you. What we're going to do now is send you an email with the JD on it, the job description on it. Please feel free to make any amendments or tweaks that we've missed. The email is going to say when you're going to first interview, when you're going to second interview, when you're going to offer, and when you're going to pay. If you email me that back, we'll start working them up for you straight away, and then shut up. What you're doing there is, why wouldn't the client do that? If the client says, well, no, actually, we want to see some CVs and all this and then from there you work back and go, well, the benefit to you, Mr. Client, in working to a schedule is that when we're speaking to our candidates, we can say to the candidates that should you be successful, there's an interview slot here, here, and here. So what that does, Mr. Candidate, is Mr. Client, it puts your role above everyone else's. It's about explaining the benefits to the client of that. For me, a good recruitment consultant takes the pain away. A good recruitment consultant decides which candidates go forward. The problem you've got is that when you give the power to the client, you put the phone down, you spend 3 days trying to find the candidate, you find the candidate, you send the candidates to the client, he then 3 days later comes back to you and says, yeah, I quite like that CV. He's making that judgment based on the CV. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you pitch it right and he trusts you, you send the CVs over and say, my recommendations are these 3, that I'll put them in your diary because of this, and he's like, okay, I believe you. He's making his judgment based on your recommendation, not his own judgment based on a black and white bit of paper, because you've spoken to the candidate, you've met the candidate, you've qualified the candidate, he hasn't. So really, surely it should be you that decides to interview, not the client.
But anyway, now it's just so interesting, because as you are talking, I have all these flashbacks of what went wrong with our clients. So I think we will need to adjust also a lot of stuff on our end. And especially, I mean, now when I'm listening to you, it comes down to the mindset, right? Because the process is very straightforward. Often it's, get a client, start sourcing, send candidates, but just the way you position yourself as the advisor who facilitates the process and who should be on interviews, like that's super powerful.
I guess my point was, like, you don't hire a plumber and then tell the plumber how to fix the tap. As in, a manager shouldn't hire a recruitment consultant and tell him how to do the recruitment aspects. You should be telling him how to do it, or her how to do it. That's the point I'm trying to make. Do you understand?
Yeah, that's so true. Well, at the end, it comes down to really understanding the role, being able to advise the client, and in order to achieve that status, probably the recruiter needs to be somehow positioned on the market as a professional advisor or on LinkedIn. Like, have you seen any interesting examples of how people position themselves as the advisors?
Yeah, well, I think on LinkedIn itself, I'm a good example of that. Up until 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't necessarily believe in LinkedIn. Now I've got over 72,000 connections. I get 2 or 3 million views a month on LinkedIn, and I positioned myself as the advisor. How I've done that is that I've drilled down again on my niche. What am I good at? Leadership, recruitment, and well-being. And my content is based on those 3 pillars. And all I do on a daily, weekly basis is send content that's based around leadership, recruitment, and well-being. I stick to that in a personable way. I offer value and advice, and then I get a lot of my business from people just then dropping me a line saying, "I've seen you on LinkedIn. We'd like to get you in. Don't need to interview me because they've seen me. I've done videos, I've done texts." So I think that how you position yourself as an advisor is you put yourself out there, you do some content, you be real, you be personable, you add value, and it takes time, and that's a great way. Recruitment consultants as well. There's no reason why they can't do that. And recruitment businesses, I think the power of LinkedIn is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So that's also what a lot of people out there should be doing in order to get clients, right? Post content and then have some simple call to action in each article or post. If you need to hire, hit me. Awesome, cool. So I'm sure a lot of recruiters who are transitioning and would like to start the business, they took a lot from your insights so far. Before we wrap it up, is there anything like some final advice that you would like to share with the audience, regarding the mindset or the expertise or niching down or anything that you would find most useful for people?
Yeah, I think you've kind of answered the question actually. I think that when I set up my business 25 years ago, I had this inherent belief in myself. My mindset was that you can have all the operations and process, which is really important. But if you don't believe you're going to be successful, then you won't. So it sounds quite straightforward, but I think that we can overthink things sometimes. Actions speak louder than words. So I think particularly in this market, you need to get on and do it. You need to start being proactive, start building relationships, start going out there, and start is the piece of advice I'd give. If you mess up or the client says no, go on to the next one. And don't be disheartened by that. It's the people that in this market, the people that push through the storm are the ones that get to the sunshine in the end.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. And before we wrap it up, where can people find a bit more about you, connect with you, and stay in touch?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram as well and TikTok, but LinkedIn's the best place to find me.
Awesome. So I'll include the link in the description on YouTube and also in the podcast show notes. So thanks again for sharing all these insights. And I see it's been very exciting also for you to grow the agency, exit, and now you are advising to other businesses, so people can also connect with you if they need help with their own business.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you.